The Need to Feed was incorporated as a 501c3 not-for-profit. The mission is to provide fresh produce for food pantries. We found that in Indiana, when we had a huge home garden and had a bumper crop, we had too much left over. I mean, I could only can so much. So we called some of the pantries and asked if they would be interested in receiving the produce. We were really astounded to find that pantries didn't receive fresh produce. So when we relocated to South Florida, we found that the mission of the Need to Feed was even more important in Broward County, where 279,000 households are facing food insecurity. So that means at some point they don't have enough money to buy food, whether it be because they have to purchase medication or if they have to pay for rent. It's just, that's what food insecurity is, that they just don't have enough access to fresh, nutritious food at all times. So we started with a very small garden in Pompano, and the Jim Moran Foundation approached us and said, how can we help you grow and expand? What you do is so important. So that's when they gave us use of this land and when we put in this garden. And we currently have the Pompano and Deerfield gardens. And Keith was successful in growing over 3,000 pounds of fresh produce from those two gardens. When Keith delivers the produce at the pantries, we then will go in that trailer. And then what I do as a Le Cordon Bleu trained chef, I'll do a quick demonstration on how to incorporate that produce into what they're getting at the pantry. This, for example, has some celery, some grapes, and dill from the garden. And teaching kids where their food comes from, what it really is supposed to taste like. Because if you taste something from the garden versus something from the store, it tastes entirely different. Then we're going to teach them how to make certain things using the produce, from the garden. The food that they're putting into their mouths and that they're trying to sustain their bodies with has absolutely no nutritional value whatsoever. It is processed, it is refined, and it's barely food. So you have people gaining weight, hence the obesity epidemic, and you have people who are literally starving because what they are eating is providing them absolutely zero nutritional value. So it's really quite sad. And then you also have people who say, oh, well, we're supporting these people, they're on food stamps and they, can buy filet mignon. And it's like, live on food stamps and tell me if you can buy filet mignon. Of course you can, but then you won't have any food beyond that. So when you hear that, just stop and think, does that really make sense? Are they really doing that? Because the answer, at least with the ones that I'm working with, is no. And of course there are people who abuse the system. There are people who abuse a lot of systems. Yeah. But it's not as prevalent as one may lead you to believe. The people that are benefiting from these services predominantly are the elderly. We had a 92-year-old man on an oxygen mask waiting in a very long line in the hot sun for food because he can't afford his medication and food. And he had just gotten back from the hospital from dialysis. It was heart-wrenching. The other group that is the largest population that we work with are working families. So 2 people working in the family, but only making minimum wage. 3 children, they can't do it. So they have to turn somewhere in order to meet the gap, fill the gap. And that's when they turn to pantries.